10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 349. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 349, and it is the last week of the month, so you know what that means. We are doing our Tune of the Month episode, and since we have been looking at the music of Thelonious Monk, we're going to choose one of my favorite tunes written by him, Ask Me Now. And boy, is it a doozy of a tune in terms of chord changes. We're going to go over all of that, and then I've got an etude for you. But before we jump into the show, as usual, just wanted to remind you this is a listener-supported show, which means we rely on people just like you to support the podcast and keep it coming out in the form of a small monthly donation. You do get a PDF for every single episode along with audio examples, and that holds true for every single episode that we've ever done. So there are 349 episodes worth of material over on Patreon, and that is the platform that we use to support the show. So go over to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, or go on patreon.com, search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson, and you'll be able to get yourself signed up. So quick shout out to some new patrons this week. Thank you to our new $5 patrons, Eden, Till, Dave, Gemster, and John. And thank you to our new $3 patron, Natasha. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. It really makes it possible to keep putting these episodes out, and it's the only reason we've been around for 349 episodes at this point. So again, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today. All right, so let's jump into today's episode. One of my favorite Thelonious Monk tunes is actually a ballad. I think his ballad writing is some of the most beautiful that I've ever heard from any jazz composer in history. And one of the ballads that's always kind of stuck in my mind and I've been listening to since I was a young musician is the tune Ask Me Now. And it has such a beautiful melody, but the chords are so difficult. There's so many of them. It's really hard to come up with a solo statement over it. So what I want to try to do today is go over the chords, maybe try to make sense of them for you, and then we'll go over the etude that I have prepared that you can practice that will at least get you a start into playing over this fantastic, absolutely gorgeous tune. And then I'll also give you some recordings that I really, really love over this tune to go and listen to. If you've never played this before, or maybe you've never even heard it before, these recordings will give you a good place to start in terms of that. All right, so let's start by going over the chord progression. Let's talk about the basics first. So first of all, this is a 32 bar form. I would consider it to be A, B, A, and that's a pretty standard 32 bar form, that A, B, A. So, 2 A sections, a bridge, and then we come back out into an A section. And it's in the key of concert E flat. So we want to keep that in mind too as we go through here. Although what you're going to see is that it moves quite a bit. And there's just a lot going on in terms of chord movement. Because it is such a slow tempo, because it is a ballad, we're going to see just a lot of chords happening, sometimes every beat. And in fact, that's how it starts. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at the first 2 bars as kind of a unit because there's a pattern there. So what we see is a concert A minor 7 chord as our first chord, and then immediately on beat 2 it goes to D7, and you'll recognize that as a 2-5 in the key of G. But it doesn't go to G. Instead what it does is it goes to G sharp minor to C sharp 7. So that's a 2-5 in F sharp. Then instead of going to F sharp, we see it go to a G minor, to C7, 2-5 in F, doesn't go there. Then we see it go down another half step, F sharp minor, to B7. So what we're seeing is this pattern of these descending 2-5s in half steps that never resolve at any point. So okay? And then we get another half step down, but the harmonic rhythm changes. So now in bar 3, we hit an F minor 7 chord, which actually lasts for 2 whole beats, which feels like a lifetime after 1 beat each. And then that goes to B flat 7 over the rest of the measure. So that's a 2-5 in E flat. But again, it doesn't go there, right? It goes F minor 7, B flat 7, and then it goes to a C sharp 7 flat 5 chord, which is a really interesting choice. So you see, there's all these deceptive cadences. It's all these 2-5s. We're going, when is it going to resolve? When is it going to resolve? When is it going to resolve? Well, it never does. It never does. So let's go over those first 3 bars again up until that C sharp 7 flat 5 chord. Now we go to that C sharp 7 flat 5, and then down to C7 flat 5. More half steps. Remember how I said Monk loves to use that dominant 7 flat 5 chord? Well, we've already seen 2 examples of it, okay? So there's the first 4 bars, exactly what I just played. Now in bar 5, we see an F7, down to an E7, and then we finally resolve to E flat, which is our home bass, okay? So what is that? F7 to E7 to E flat. Well, what it really is a tritone substitution, right? Because if we think about that F7 as a 5-5 chord or a major 2 chord, okay, then what we expect is to go to B flat 7 and then go to E flat major. But really what we're going to do is we're going to play F7, then we're going to sub out that B flat chord for an E7 chord, which is the tritone substitution of B flat 7. And then we're going to resolve. Okay, so that's what's happening there. Then after the E flat chord, we go 1, 6, C minor 7, then 2, 5, and then the last bar of the first A section, instead of resolving to E flat, we use all of these half-step descending dominant 7 flat 5 chords. So again, we see the dominant 7 flat 5 chords, which clearly he loves. And then we also see this chromatic descending chords happening again, right? So it starts on C sharp and it goes C sharp, C, then down to B, then down to B flat. And then we're back into the second A section. So really interesting stuff. Let's play that entire A section. Then we come back into. So the second A section is basically the same as the first A section, except that in the last bar, so this would be bar 16, it actually resolves to the 1 chord, to the E flat concert chord. All right, that's the only difference. So now let's go to the bridge. So starting in measure 17, we have a 2, 5 to 1. 2, 3, 4. Now we have a 2 tritone substitution to 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we go to a 6 chord, 3, 4, to an F7, and then we go 2, 5, and then another deceptive cadence. We go to an A flat 7 chord instead of an E flat major chord at the end of the bridge. And then the last A section is exactly the same as the second A section. So those are perfectly together exactly the same chords. So you can see there's a lot going on here. This is a really complicated progression. So it's going to take you a while to wrap your head around it and really be able to hear it, okay? Now, let's talk about the approach to soloing over this. I think one mistake that everybody makes, including myself, is that because there are so many chords, we get so caught up in trying to catch every single chord that sometimes it sounds a little bit contrived. Now, what you're going to notice in the etude is that sometimes I'm playing every single chord, and then sometimes I'm simply just resting or playing over the top of those chords as if some of them weren't there. So one thing that you're going to have to do is kind of figure out where I'm doing what, and then maybe apply that to your own solos. What I would start by doing is learning the melody to this, because that'll really inform your solo. And there's several places to find that. It's in a bunch of real books, all that kind of stuff. Or you could learn it by ear, which would be really cool. So let me give you a couple of recordings that you can check out that are some of my personal favorite recordings of this actual song. So the first one is from the Solo Monk album, where it's just Monk playing solo piano. And I think this might be like the purest place to hear it because it's just Monk. It is solely his interpretation of the song. And that's a really, really great place to start because you're literally hearing it from the source, the person who wrote it. The second one is another Monk album. It's with his quintet, and it's called 5 by Monk by 5, which is a really cool album title. And I love that one because there's multiple horns, so you get to hear multiple different interpretations of the melody. And then the third one would be anytime Joe Henderson played it. This was clearly one of Joe Henderson's favorite songs because he recorded it on multiple occasions. And I just absolutely love the way that he interprets the melody on every single recording that he's played of it. So I would check those out first. And then, of course, you could just go on YouTube and type it in, or you could just go on Spotify or Apple Music and type it in and just start listening to recordings. But I think that Solo Monk recording is just a great place to start as far as developing an initial interpretation of this particular melody, which is pretty complicated, okay? So I'm going to play the etude that I prepared here at the end of the episode. Remember, you can get that if you're a Patreon member. It will come in concert, B-flat, E-flat, and bass clef for you so that you can learn it, develop an approach, and you can find that by going to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, and you'll have instant access to all of that stuff. So hope you're all doing well. Let me know if you have any questions about any of this stuff we've talked about with Monk. Really enjoyed exploring one of my favorite musicians with you this month. And here is the etude. We'll talk to all of you soon. Have a good one. Bye.